It's time.
It's time.
And now, it's time for Herman and Sharon.
I love you. See, I have a real long love because they shoot me, and it takes a while to shoot me. So how are you folks that are watching today?
Hello, everybody.
We,
I don't know what he's doing, but anyway.
We start out with all of this great music inside the studio when it opens, and then it just dies. It just gets so quiet in here. And I'm the kind of guy that I've got to have...
I know, you have to have noise, enthusiasm, people running around.
When she gets in my car, if I'm listening to music, it's wide open. And she'll get in and she'll go, what in the, oh my goodness.
There's no way you could hear a train coming or an ambulance. I don't know how you do it.
I'm what is known as a Baptist-costal. I have a lot of pent-up energy inside of me.
You have a lot of pent-up things. Anyway,
That's right.
We've got to get right to this testimony because it's
He's
really
amazing. He's
yeah.
amazing. An amazing wife, too, he's got.
Dr. Eddie Donnally and his beautiful wife Sandy's with us today. He was a professional horse jockey, and he became, he's got a testimony. I don't want to read all his stuff because he's got to tell you about it, but what a testimony he has.
He'll remember everything that he's ever done. So he's going to
That's right.
reveal that right here.
So we're going to meet him right now.
See, the reason I was so attracted to this book, and you're going to have an opportunity to read this book because it is fantastic. He is a phenomenal writer. He wrote for a newspaper, got awards.
Wow.
He's just filled with all kinds of abilities that God's given him. And when he heard this sound, he... Good to have you.
That's
Sandy,
great.
good to have you. All right. Does
so
that make
good
you
to
want to
see
climb on?
I'm ready. Leg up, Herman.
I love the way the guys out there, they always, handle, and you step in there and and you get up on that horse. and I had an uncle, and we were discussing this in the green room. P.J. Bailey, great rider, made tons of money. Blew tons of money too. Isn't it amazing that you make tons of money fast, and you have the tendency to think, I guess, that the spigot is never going to run dry.
That's true. That's true. I was telling you, the first year I rode, I think I made more money than my father did in any 10 years of his life as being a railroad brakeman, and I did not handle it at all, as is typical.
You bought cars, lived the high life.
Oh, partied hard.
Bought lots of threads.
Had syphilis at age 18.
Yes,
my goodness.
That can kill you.
It can.
Unless you take a lot of penicillin.
I think I had 40 shots. But
in fact, I think that killed Al Capone in prison. They never dealt with it, and that they say it got into his brain. So,
it can be.
see all the history I've got?
Yeah.
It's worthless.
Well,
but
see how many things God saved me from?
That's right. That's right. Professional horse jockey, won the Eclipse Award for newspaper writing.
Yes.
Did you know you had that kind of gift?
Well, I always liked to write. Even when I first started being a jockey, I went to school to study journalism, and by the time I'd retired from writing, I'd probably been published by just about every major newspaper east of the Mississippi, and I stepped in a role as a publicity director at Tampa Bay Downs here in Florida. And actually, what was interesting about that is the year before I was indicted for race fixing, and they wouldn't allow me on the track. And then the next year, George Steinbrenner, who co-owned the track at the time, hired me as their publicity director.
Usually when I have like 6'6" guys, I have them stand up, and I stand next to them, and it makes me look like I just dropped into the floor. And this guy is the size of a jockey. My uncle was 4'11".
Yeah.
What was your?
I'm about 5'4".
So you're the height of my dad. He was. He was 5'4", 5'3.5".
Something like that, 5'3".
And I was telling him that I always wanted to be a jockey because my uncle, P.J. Bailey, in the 50s, was making like $100,000 a year. I asked him one time, "What do you go around 100,000 a year? All these other people are ham and eggers." You know, it's like that was his term. In other words, if you didn't make the kind of money that you're ham and egger. But I used to admire his clothes. He had custom-made shoes of all kinds of alligator, crocodile, lizard, ostrich, and different colors. And of course, he drove gorgeous Cadillacs. He had T-Birds and a home in Forest Hill, New York. I mean, he had what looked like a movie star life.
Is that what you had?
Well, yes, it certainly was early. I mean, you're recognized in restaurants, and everybody thinks you know the name of the unknown soldier and the next horse that's going to win.
And give me a tip.
Yeah. So you develop this entourage when you're very young of people who want to be a part of your life and who are willing to supply just about anything that you would like to partake of.
Now, you were a jockey for 20 years?
I did. I rode for almost 20 years.
That's a long
I rode
time.
about 10,000 races.
How close did you get? Because there's a lot of guys, jockeys, that fall and are paralyzed. Eddie Arcaro wasn't.
Well, I have a good friend, Ronnie Turcotte,
Yeah.
who rode Secretariat, and is a friend of mine today. As a Christian, we often talk and pray, and he rode Secretariat, the Triple Crown winner in 1972, and I know Ronnie very well, and he's now one of about 50 jockey paraplegics, made
Oh,
paraplegics
really?
as a result of racing accidents.
Yeah.
A lot of jockeys go in head first. I think
Yeah.
I was, I'm like most jockeys, I'll tell you, I broke 13 bones and was very lucky, and I think of myself that way because it is extremely dangerous.
Now, I never knew this. My uncle never shared this with me. But you used a electric prod
Yeah, I was not.
in your hand.
Yeah.
And that's illegal.
Oh, highly. I could have been ruled off a lifetime.
But
if
I agree with you when you think about it. That whip is worse than that prod.
Used incorrectly, which it often is, can be.
Because you
But,
see him just beating
yeah.
that horse.
Sometimes if you hit a horse under the stomach instead of on the rump, it does really hurt a horse, cause them to sulk.
Yeah.
I would have probably won more races if I hadn't have been allowed to carry the stick, probably. But as far as machines is what you're talking
Yes.
about.
And you had to hide that in your hand.
Yeah, there's a piece in the book. I was at Churchill Downs the day before the Kentucky Derby. It's about 50,000 people in the grandstand. And I have one in my hand. And the tongue tie, which goes around a horse's tongue, fell off. Well, anyway, the trainer has to put it on in the state of Kentucky, so they had to page the trainer to come put on the tongue tie. In the meantime, I'm walking around in front of 40,000 people and cameras with
Flashing,
with
yeah.
something in my hand that could have ruled me off for a lifetime. Wow. Very scary. And I decided at that time, I don't think I need to do this again. And I did. But
you did it enough times before that. What was on the left side of so that the people on this side couldn't see it while you're racing?
yeah, I would generally I would carry my whip in my right
touch it on the
hand.
neck.
Yeah.
You think they still are doing that?
People ask me about, is racing crooked? And I think, I think racing is extremely well-regulated sport. It's a huge well-regulated sport. But I think anytime you have people and money, whatever the industry, whether it be banking or Wall Street or otherwise, I think you're going to have some amount of chicanery.
Yeah.
So, but I
But
don't.
you talk about in the book though when you use that. I mean, he was like a couple of links behind, and they were gaining on you, and you pressed that prod on his neck, and man, that sucker took off.
There were a certain number of horses who learned to cheat, and it's not effective on any other horses. 95% of the horses try as hard as they can. They love to run. That's
Sure.
what they
Oh,
do.
I love
But there's a
horses,
certain
yeah.
percentage of horses that are probably smarter than others, and they learn to cheat a little bit because it's sometimes hard for them to run. And on those kinds of horses, which are very rare, it is very effective.
When
So-
did you attempt suicide?
I attempted suicide when I became a sports writer. I went through sexual trauma when my mom died when I was 5, my grandmother died when I was 12, went to live with my step-parents. My stepbrother and I had a sexual escapade and
So you
had suffered trauma.
You
Yeah.
were bisexual.
So when I divorced, which was the most painful thing in my life, I think the most traumatic thing in my life, I went into that lifestyle, and I lived that lifestyle for about 7 or 8 years. And
While you were racing?
No, this was when I was a sports writer.
Okay.
I wrote for the Dallas Morning News
Okay.
for 8 years, and then hosted TV shows and did a lot of things like that. And this was during that time
And
period.
then you got into cocaine, right?
I was in Houston. I went from doing my own TV show on a horse racing network and writing for the Austin American Statesman at that point, to living on the backstretch of a racetrack because of an addiction to crack cocaine. Actually, the trainer who hired me was a very famous trainer by the name of Jack Van Berg. And 7 years before, I had covered the Derby for the Dallas Morning News and covered his winning with Ali Sheba. And then 7 years later, because of addiction to crack cocaine, I wound up working for him as a groom.
So you went through a couple of divorces,
I did.
and all of that because of your lifestyle.
I just wasn't,
Marriage
wasn't-
material.
No, I probably wasn't because of, I think when God touched my life and healed me in the jail cell and God put the right woman in front of me, Sandy, God bless her.
How'd you meet Sandy?
I met Sandy at the Los Angeles Dream Center. I came out of...
That is neat. You know, Jim Baker met.
His wife there, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Lori.
right.
That's
Well,
right.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
that's
yeah.
right. He was-
I knew Jim Baker there. I went to his Bible study several times
Did
when
you?
I was there. He was there when I was there.
Yeah.
And but we were both in Bible classes, and she was getting ready to go back to New Orleans, and I was, of course, enamored with serving God, street ministry, and just whatever, doing ministry 16 hours a day. And we'd had a class, and I came home, and the class was ending. She was leaving, and I sat down in this little one room that I lived in, and God spoke to me, go back and meet this woman. And
Did you see her before? God
yeah,
spoke
yeah,
to you?
we were in class together.
Just checking.
And she kept acing all the tests, and I was a little impressed with that.
Wow.
But, so I was sitting on my bed, kind of arguing with the Holy Spirit, and finally I gave in, and we were having a kind of an after-dinner celebration at a restaurant to commemorate the end of the class, and we went to the restaurant together, and then 7 months later we were married at the Los Angeles Dream Center.
Sandy,
Yeah.
when you saw her, give me your opinion.
Well, I always say I was on my way to New Orleans and I was looking for boxes, and I found
you were
I
leaving-
found
you
a
were leaving-
husband.
Really? So you were leaving the center?
I was going to go back to New Orleans. Yeah, I was going to pack, and I had some boxes packed. Yeah.
So your life before the guy that you're sitting next to how was it?
Well, I was in some dark places myself, and
Well, the Dream Center. I mean.
at the Dream Center,
I mean,
previous to the
yeah,
Dream Center. I
Yeah,
was.
previous. Yeah, but I mean the Dream Center. It's amazing the people that come there with a life, a formal life.
Yeah.
That I mean, Lori, I think was
It's a change.
5
Yeah.
abortions. I think she's had.
How did you
Yeah.
come to know the Lord yourself?
Well, I was in Hollywood, and I was doing some performing, and I was actually with a famous person, Don Knotts. And then there was a
Is
time.
he really funny?
Yeah.
Okay.
He thought I was funny.
Okay. Okay. He got his material from you.
Yeah,
then.
he told me.
think you're
He
funny.
said I should be the writer.
Oh,
so
my.
So anyway, I just ran into a satanic group, a cult, and I guess I was like Paul. God had to slap me down, and
Yeah.
I was on my knees praying to God to help me because they were stalking me,
Wow.
and
They meaning.
the satanic cult.
Was stalking
They
her,
were
yeah.
stalking me. There were all kinds of weird things happening, supernatural, and supernaturally. And so I was on my knees in my bedroom, and I was asking God to help me. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was 1987. I remember it so clearly. And I got back on my bed, and I was crying, and all of a sudden, a light came over me, and I levitated. And I could see myself in all the mirrors, and I was
You didn't have a LSD hit, did you?
no,
Okay, just checking.
no. I was just drained from all kinds of things happening, and I thought I was going to hit the ceiling, but I was just staying quiet because I was kind of in awe and fear, and my body started shaking, and I saw a black entity leave from my feet, and then I was lowered down. It was so peaceful, and I got up, and I was just had all this adrenaline, and I felt so light. Before I felt so heavy, and now it was just, it was God. God saved me, and it was just.
So from that time,
Oh, yeah,
where did you go?
From that time, I didn't know